My name is Rebecca Hayes, and I'm 29 years old. If you'd asked me a year ago what my life looked like, I would have told you I was building a future with the man I loved, piece by piece, brick by brick. Calvin and I met right after college at a mutual friend's rooftop party. He was all laughter and restless energy, a graphic designer with paint smudges on his fingers, and dreams spilling out of his mouth faster than he could chase them. I was the opposite, an architect who lived by structure and plans. He said my discipline balanced his chaos. I said his chaos made me breathe. Back then, we both thought that was poetry. For 4 years, we were inseparable. We moved into a tiny apartment with creaky floors and a balcony big enough for exactly 2 coffee mugs and a dying plant. I loved that space, not because it was fancy, but because it was ours. I handled most of the bills. He filled the walls with his sketches and made every morning feel like a beginning. When Calvin's freelance jobs dried up, I didn't think twice. I picked up extra design shifts, covered the rent, skipped dinners out, and kept smiling. Love, I thought, was about weathering storms together, and I was proud to be his safe harbor. "Rebecca, you're my anchor," he'd whisper sometimes, wrapping his arms around me after a rough day. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Those words, they used to feel like forever. By our 4th year, I started saving for something more permanent. I wanted to propose, not because I doubted he would eventually, but because I wanted to. I wanted to be the one who said, "You are home to me." I spent weeks researching rings, something simple, timeless, but full of meaning. I didn't want a grand show, just a promise that felt real. That's when I made my first mistake. I told Lila, my younger sister, about it. Lila had always been my confidant, the kind of sister who raided my closet, borrowed my shoes, and sent me good luck texts before every big meeting. She was spontaneous, radiant, and just a little reckless. Everyone adored her, especially Calvin. But I never saw it as a threat. She was family. We met at our favorite cafe one afternoon. I slid the small velvet box across the table. Her eyes widened, and for a split second I thought I saw admiration. But it was followed by something else, something fleeting and sharp. "Wow," she breathed, touching the box lightly. "He'll love this. It's so you. Safe and elegant." Safe. The word lodged somewhere deep in my chest, but I brushed it off. "I was thinking of proposing this weekend," I said, grinning nervously. "Maybe at our favorite spot by the river." Lila smiled, or tried to. "That's really romantic, Rebecca. I'm happy for you." Yet her tone wavered. Her eyes darted away out the window. I told myself she was just surprised. After all, people still expect the man to propose first. That night when I got home, Calvin was on his laptop humming to himself. I kissed the top of his head, and he smiled, distractedly closing the screen a little too quickly. "Big project," I teased. "Yeah, something for a client," he said without looking up. There was a faint scent of unfamiliar perfume lingering in the air, not mine. But I was tired, and love makes you rationalize the strangest things. The next few days passed in a blur. Work deadlines, late nights, small gestures of affection that felt mechanical. He used to text me random "miss you" messages during the day. Lately, all I got were "busy, talk later." Still, I refused to read too much into it. I told myself that long relationships go through quiet phases, that passion evolves, that this was normal. On Friday morning, I packed the ring box into my purse before heading to work. I remember catching my reflection in the mirror, hopeful, nervous, completely unaware that I was about to have my heart dismantled in slow motion. Around noon, I got a text from Lila. "Hey, you still going through with it this weekend?" "Of course," I replied. "Why?" "No reason. Just make sure he's ready." That last sentence sat with me all day. I almost called her to ask what she meant, but I didn't want to seem paranoid. I had everything planned. Dinner reservations, candles, his favorite wine. I even took half a day off work to prepare. But that night when I came home, something in the air felt different. Calvin was sitting on the couch, phone in hand, expression unreadable. He didn't greet me, didn't kiss me, didn't even smile. Just looked at me like I was someone he barely recognized. "Hey," I said softly, "everything okay?" He exhaled. "We need to talk." The phrase that never leads anywhere good. I dropped my bag, suddenly uneasy. "Talk about what?" He leaned back, arms crossed. "About us. About where this is going." My heart began to race. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then said it like it was nothing. "Lila told me about the ring." I froze. What?" He smirked faintly. "Yeah. She said you were planning something for this weekend. I think it's sweet, Rebecca, but I can't let you embarrass yourself." My pulse roared in my ears. Embarrass myself. He shrugged. "You're great, but this," he gestured vaguely around the room. "This life, It's too predictable, too safe. I need more excitement. Excitement, I repeated numbly. And you think proposing to me would be embarrassing? Calvin looked me straight in the eye. Honestly, yeah. You're amazing, but I've outgrown this. Outgrown us. I stood there unable to breathe. Are you seeing someone else? He hesitated, just long enough for me to know the answer. I swallowed hard. Who is she? He laughed a hollow, cruel sound. You wouldn't understand. Something inside me cracked then. Not loud, not visible, just final. Without another word, I walked to our bedroom, opened the drawer where I'd hidden the ring box, and placed it gently on the coffee table. I hope she's worth it, I said quietly. Calvin didn't reply. I grabbed my keys, my coat, and walked out the door. The click of it closing behind me was louder than any shout. That night, I slept on my friend Maya's couch, staring at the ceiling. Every corner of my mind whispered why. And just as I was drifting into uneasy sleep, my phone buzzed. A message from Lila. Rebecca, please don't hate me. I didn't open it. I just turned the phone face down and let the silence swallow me whole. I woke up the next morning in Maya's apartment with the kind of heaviness that makes even breathing feel like effort. Her cat was curled up by my feet, and sunlight leaked through the curtains, soft, indifferent, and cruelly normal. The world kept moving even though mine had stopped. Maya was in the kitchen, already making coffee. She'd always been the no-questions type of friend. She gave space until I was ready to fill it. But when she saw my face, she didn't need to ask. He cheated, didn't he? She said quietly. I nodded. He didn't say it directly, but I know. With who? My throat tightened. Lila. Even saying it out loud felt unreal, like reciting someone else's story. Maya froze coffee pot midair. Your sister? Yeah. My voice cracked. She was the one who told him about the proposal. She knew what that moment meant to me. The smell of burnt coffee filled the air. Maya had forgotten to turn off the heat. We both laughed softly at the absurdity, then fell into silence again. I don't understand, I whispered. Why would she... Maya set the pot down, her expression a mix of pity and anger. Because some people can't stand to see others happy, especially the ones closest to them. Her words lingered long after I left her apartment. That day, I avoided going home. I walked for hours through the city, aimless, invisible. I ended up sitting on a park bench, watching strangers live lives that didn't hurt. Couples laughed. Kids chased pigeons. Someone proposed under a blooming jacaranda tree, and the girl said yes, crying and smiling at the same time. It should have made me bitter, but instead it hollowed me out. I wanted that innocence back, the belief that love could be simple. By the time I finally returned to our apartment to grab my things, the air inside felt foreign. Calvin's jacket still hung by the door. His sneakers were kicked off haphazardly near the couch, the same couch where we'd planned movie nights and lazy Sundays. And then there she was, Lila, sitting on the edge of the sofa like she belonged there. Her hair was tousled, her expression guilty, but defiant. Rebecca, I don't. My voice came out sharper than I expected. Don't say anything unless it's the truth. She stood wringing her hands. It just happened? I laughed bitterly. That's what everyone says when they destroy something. It just happened. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean to fall for him. We were just talking one night after one of his shows. I thought he was lonely, and what I interrupted. You decided to comfort him with my life. Please, she whispered. I didn't want you to find out like this. I stared at her. The sister who'd once braided my hair before school, who cried in my lap after her first heartbreak. Now she was standing in my living room, stealing the man I once thought would be my future. You told him about the ring, I said quietly. You knew how much that meant to me. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought you were rushing him. He told me he wasn't ready. I was trying to protect you. The audacity made my skin crawl. Protect me by betraying me. She flinched. Before either of us could say more, Calvin walked out of the bedroom. He looked startled to see me there, then annoyed. Rebecca, you should have called before coming over. That was the moment I realized he didn't even feel guilty. He'd already rewritten the story in his mind. I was the intruder now. You two deserve each other, I said coldly. I hope the chaos you wanted keeps you warm. I grabbed my suitcase. I had packed it earlier in case I couldn't face returning. On my way out, I paused by the door and turned back. Lila looked at me trembling, searching for forgiveness in my face. She wouldn't find it. Calvin just stared, indifferent, like he was already bored of the drama he'd created. By the way, I said, voice steady now, you were wrong. He frowned. About what? I met his eyes. You didn't outgrow me, Calvin. You shrank. And then I left for good this time. The next few weeks passed in fragments. I moved into a tiny studio across town, nothing more than a bed, a desk, and silence. But that silence became my armor. I deleted Calvin's number, blocked Lila's. At night, I'd lie awake, staring at the ring box. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. It wasn't a symbol of love anymore. It was a reminder of how deeply I could trust, and how easily that trust could be broken. Sometimes I'd imagine them together. Did they laugh at me? Did they tell themselves it was destiny? The thoughts would spiral until I forced myself to breathe. I started journaling therapy on paper. I wrote everything I wanted to scream: the humiliation, the betrayal, the rage that simmered beneath my calm. I wrote until my hand cramped and my tears dried. And then slowly something shifted. I began to see the breakup for what it was. Not a punishment, but a release. I had been giving my energy to people who drained me, not deserved me. Maya helped too. She dragged me to yoga classes, made me laugh at ridiculous TikToks, and reminded me that healing isn't graceful, it's messy, loud, and full of relapses. A month later, I started therapy. The counselor, a calm woman named June, told me, "You're allowed to be angry, just don't live there." Her words hit me harder than I expected. So I stopped asking why they did it and started asking why I allowed it to break me so completely. The nights were still long, but less suffocating. I cooked for myself again. I filled my apartment with tiny plants and post-it affirmations. I even laughed one morning when I realized I'd accidentally killed another succulent. For the first time in months, the silence in my home didn't sound like punishment. It sounded like peace. And just when I thought the worst was behind me, that's when their house of cards began to crumble. 3 months. That's how long it took for my tears to run out. Not because the pain was gone, but because I'd finally accepted that crying over people who chose chaos over love was a waste of oxygen. My mornings became a ritual of small victories. Wake up, make coffee, open the blinds, breathe. At first it was mechanical, like following a recovery manual I never signed up for. But slowly that routine began to feel like ownership. My life was mine again, stripped down to silence and sunlight. The studio was modest, a single room with paint-chipped walls and an uneven window latch. But it didn't echo with Calvin's laughter or Lila's voice, just mine. And that was freedom. I spent hours reorganizing my life, deleting old photos, blocking mutual friends who didn't want to take sides, and selling the last of Calvin's art supplies that had somehow ended up in my boxes. Every brush, every pencil gone. It wasn't spite, it was closure. At night, I'd sit by the window with a notebook and pen, journaling whatever floated to the surface. Sometimes it was grief, sometimes anger, sometimes just one sentence. He broke my trust, not my worth. Writing became my therapy before I could afford a real one. Then, one afternoon, as I was leaving work, I saw a message notification from an unknown number. "Hey, Rebecca, it's Lila. Please don't ignore me. I just want to talk." I stared at the screen for a long time before deleting it. No reply, no curiosity, nothing. But that night, another message came. "You don't understand what happened. Calvin needed someone. I was trying to help. It wasn't supposed to go this far." I let out a hollow laugh. They always say that, don't they? It wasn't supposed to go this far, yet somehow it always does. I blocked her again. Weeks passed quietly after that. Work was my distraction. I threw myself into projects, late-night deadlines, coffee-fueled drafting sessions, the satisfaction of structure and numbers. One of my coworkers, a soft-spoken analyst named Daniel, began staying late too. We'd talk about everything but our personal lives, favorite cities, childhood memories, even conspiracy theories about how office coffee was intentionally made bad to keep employees awake. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was safe. A word Calvin despised, but one that now felt sacred. One Friday, Maya convinced me to join her for a weekend photography class. "You need a hobby that doesn't involve spreadsheets," she'd said. So I went. And somewhere between adjusting camera lenses and capturing sunsets through cracked windows, I remembered how it felt to create something beautiful again. Not for anyone else, just for me. Through that lens, I started to see everything differently. Pain, betrayal, even loneliness. All of it framed differently when you changed your focus. But peace never lasts long when the past refuses to stay buried. One evening after my photography class, I received a voicemail. Calvin's voice hesitant and low. "Hey, Rebecca. I just wanted to say I hope you're okay. I heard from your mom you moved out. I didn't mean for things to get ugly. Lila and I, well, things have been complicated. I guess I just wanted to check in." Check in. The same man who had crushed me now wanted to check in. I replayed the message twice, not out of longing but fascination. His voice didn't sound confident anymore. There was strain in it, exhaustion, maybe even regret. I deleted it without saving. But the timing felt poetic, because the very next day, Maya called, voice buzzing with disbelief. "Rebecca, you won't believe this. Calvin and Lila." Let me guess, I interrupted their moving in together. Not exactly. They're falling apart. I didn't say anything, just let her talk. Apparently, Calvin had quit his design job, something about creative burnout, and was drinking more than working. Lila's friends had stopped speaking to her after rumors surfaced about Calvin flirting with her coworker at a company party. "They're becoming tabloid material," Maya said dryly. Even their mom's embarrassed. I should have felt vindicated, maybe a little satisfaction, but all I felt was tired. Tired of being connected to their chaos, even indirectly. Still that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how fragile their world must be built on betrayal sustained by denial. There's a saying my therapist would later remind me of. When you steal someone's peace, you inherit their storms. I didn't know it then, but Calvin and Lila's storm was just beginning. 2 weeks later, a mutual acquaintance sent me a message out of nowhere. "Hey, Rebecca, I'm sorry to bring this up, but you were right about Calvin. He's been seeing someone else. And Lila, she's losing it." I didn't respond. I didn't even want the details. But then curiosity, that cursed little ember, pushed me to look. Against my better judgment, I checked Calvin's social media for the first time in months. Gone were the smiling couple photos, the new beginnings captions. His profile was wiped clean. But Lila's page was a different story, a chaos of quotes about heartbreak, betrayal, and self-worth. One caption stood out. "Sometimes you give up everything for love, and love still eats you alive." I sat there, phone in hand, and felt nothing but the quiet satisfaction of distance. They were living the consequences of their own choices, and I was finally living without apology. One evening, after a long day at work, I took a walk by the river, the same place where I'd planned to propose. The sunset reflected on the water like gold dust, and for once it didn't sting to remember. I sat on a bench, camera in hand, capturing the light as it faded. In the distance, a couple laughed, carefree, unburdened. For a fleeting second, I wished I could warn them, be careful what you build your love on. But I didn't. I just took another photo of the moment, the peace, the proof that I'd survived. And for the first time since it all ended, I smiled. Because silence wasn't emptiness anymore, it was strength. I once read that people who betray others always believe they've outsmarted karma. They mistake silence for surrender, thinking the lack of retaliation means they've escaped consequences. But karma doesn't chase, it waits. And it waited beautifully for Calvin and Lila. It started with whispers, the kind that circle through mutual friends long before they hit social media. One afternoon, during a lunch break at work, Maya leaned across the table, eyes wide. "You're not going to believe this," she said, almost gleeful. "Your ex and your sister, they're imploding." I looked up from my salad, completely calm. Imploding how? Apparently Calvin's been drinking too much. Missed 2 client meetings. Lila's freaking out because she's been covering his bills. I blinked. Bills? Yeah. He quit freelancing and said he was starting a creative agency, but it's basically him on the couch watching tutorials and complaining about algorithms. I couldn't help it, I laughed. The irony was almost poetic. The man who once called me boring for having structure was now drowning in his own chaos. Maya grinned. "Girl, you dodged a bullet the size of a bus." But that wasn't the end. It never is. A week later, I got an email from my mom, short and vague. "Lila isn't doing well. She's been distant. Maybe reach out." I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, but because I knew how that story would go. The "your sisters, you should forgive her" guilt trip. The family comes first narrative that always favored the loudest victim. I wasn't going to play that role again. Still, a part of me couldn't help but wonder. So when I ran into an old college friend, Sophie, who also happened to know Calvin, I asked casually, "How are they?" She looked uncomfortable. "You really don't want to know?" I asked. "Didn't I?" Sophie sighed. "He's cheating on her, Rebecca, with her coworker, apparently. Everyone in their office knows. It's a mess." I paused, letting the words sink in. I should have felt triumphant. I should have thought, good, that's justice. But instead, I felt this deep, hollow ache, because I knew what it felt like to be blindsided by someone you trusted. "Does Lila know?" I asked. "She found out a few days ago. Threw his stuff out the window in the middle of the night. Someone filmed it. It's circulating on TikTok." A bitter smile tugged at my lips. Of course it was. That's how love stories end these days, not with closure, but with viral humiliation. That evening, as rain hammered against my window, I sat with my thoughts. It was strange seeing my past collapse without me lifting a finger. Once upon a time, I would have been the one begging, crying, bargaining. But now I just watched quietly as the universe balanced its own scales. My phone buzzed, a message from a number I hadn't seen in months. Rebecca, it's me. I don't even know where to start. Calvin cheated on me. With someone from work. He lied about everything. You were right. I didn't reply, but for the first time, I read her words without shaking hands. 5 minutes later, another message came. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I thought I was in love, but he used me. I can't sleep. I hate myself. I sat there staring at the screen until it went dark. Then I typed a single line and deleted it before hitting send. You didn't just lose him, Lila. You lost me too. I didn't know her closure. Weeks passed and more stories surfaced. Calvin had been fired from his latest contract. Lila moved back to our parents' house, avoiding neighbors and family gatherings. Mom called once, her voice tight with disapproval. You could at least talk to your sister, she said. I could, I replied calmly. But I won't. She's your blood, Rebecca. And he was my heart, I said softly. She didn't care then. There was silence on the other end. Then a sigh. You've changed. Yes, I said. That's the point. One Saturday morning, I found the old ring box again, the one I'd meant to give Calvin. It had sat untouched in a drawer all these months, a relic of who I used to be. I took it out to the balcony, opened it, and stared at the simple gold band catching sunlight. It wasn't a symbol of love anymore. It was proof that I once believed in something pure. And maybe that belief, naive as it was, deserved a better ending. So I slipped the ring into an envelope and mailed it to myself at work with a note, for the woman who learned to choose peace over pain. It arrived 3 days later. I smiled when I opened it, then tucked it into my desk drawer, a personal reminder that some gifts are meant to be kept, even if they were never received. That night, as I walked home, I passed by a cafe where Calvin and I once spent hours sketching dream houses on napkins. It was closed now, boarded up, windows cracked. A for-lease sign hung crookedly on the door. It felt like poetry. Everything we'd built on illusion had finally collapsed. The next morning, I received one more message from Calvin this time. I messed up, Rebecca. I thought I wanted freedom, but I just wanted someone to believe in me again. You were the only one who ever did. I stared at the message, then deleted it. No reply. Because I finally understood you don't owe redemption to the people who destroyed your peace. They were both ghosts now, and ghosts don't deserve the living. That night, as I watched city lights shimmer from my balcony, I realized something profound. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need apologies. Their lives were unraveling perfectly on their own. And me, I was finally free enough to stop looking back. The funny thing about healing is that it doesn't announce itself. There isn't some cinematic moment where you wake up one morning and say, I'm over it. It happens quietly, in between the coffee you make without thinking of them, the song you can finally listen to again, the name that no longer hurts when someone mentions it. That's where I was when karma came knocking. It started on a gray Tuesday morning. I was leaving a client meeting when my phone buzzed an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me pick up. Rebecca. The voice was shaky. I didn't recognize it at first. Then I did. Lila. I froze on the sidewalk, the noise of traffic fading around me. What do you want? She let out a breath that sounded like defeat. I know you probably hate me, and you have every right to, but I need to say this. I didn't answer. Calvin's gone, she said finally. He left, packed his stuff, and disappeared 2 weeks ago. No note, no explanation, nothing. I felt nothing. Just a quiet, detached pity, not for her, but for the version of myself that once would have cared. Why are you telling me this, Lila? Because I don't have anyone else, she whispered. Mom barely speaks to me. Dad's ashamed. And Calvin, her voice cracked. He took money from me, Rebecca. Thousands. Said it was for his agency. Turns out it was for someone else. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. You chose him over me, I said evenly. Now you're living with the consequences. I know, she said through quiet sobs, and I hate myself for it. I thought he loved me. I didn't respond. She kept talking, desperate, spiraling. I wake up every morning and see your face in my head the way you looked when you left that night. You should have screamed at me. You should have hit me. Anything but walk away like I didn't exist. I took a long pause before answering. You're right, I said softly. I should have screamed, but I think silence hurt you more. There was a stunned pause on the line, a realization she couldn't deny. I'm sorry, Rebecca, she whispered finally. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. You were right about everything. And for the first time in months, my voice didn't shake when I replied, I know. Then I hung up. That night, I went for a walk. The city was bathed in the soft glow of rain-soaked streetlights. I passed by couples holding hands, a man playing guitar near the subway, a little girl in a red coat chasing after her father. It was all ordinary, yet it felt sacred. I thought about how Calvin used to call me boring, how Lila said she needed excitement, and now their excitement had eaten them alive. They'd burned down everything I'd built, but in doing so, they'd freed me from the fire too. 2 weeks later, I ran into Maya at a cafe. She had that look on her face, the one that meant gossip. What I asked, sipping my latte. She smirked. Guess who's back in town trying to fix his reputation? I didn't even have to ask. Calvin. Bingo. Apparently, he'd been kicked out of his latest freelance contract after his client discovered he'd been borrowing assets from other artists. Word spread fast in the design community. His career was crumbling, and no one wanted to work with him anymore. Maya leaned forward, lowering her voice. He's been telling people that you're the only one who ever believed in him, that he messed up the best thing that ever happened to him. I stirred my coffee slowly. Let him tell his stories. I'm done being a character in them. That weekend, I attended an exhibit for local photographers, something I'd dreamed of since starting my classes. One of my pieces, Stillness, had been selected for display. It was a simple shot, the river at dawn calm and undisturbed with sunlight breaking through fog. When I walked into the gallery and saw people stopping to look at it, my heart swelled. Not with pride, but peace. Because for the first time in my adult life, something beautiful existed in my world that wasn't tied to someone else's validation. And that's when I saw him. Calvin, standing a few feet away, unshaven eyes sunken. He looked smaller, like someone who'd been living in the shadow of his own decisions. He approached slowly, almost cautiously. Rebecca, he murmured. I didn't expect to see you here. I turned perfectly composed. It's public, Calvin. You're allowed to exist. He gave a dry laugh. You look different. I am different. He nodded, hands buried in his pockets. I heard about your exhibit. Congratulations. I always knew you'd do something amazing. For a second, I saw the ghost of the man I used to love, charming, soft-spoken, promising. But ghosts don't stay long. He glanced at the photograph, then back at me. I miss this version of you, the one who believed in me. I tilted my head, meeting his eyes. You don't miss me, Calvin. You miss who you were when I loved you. That shut him up. He nodded, stepped back, and muttered, You deserve better. I hope you find it. I already did, I said quietly. As he walked away, I realized something profound. I didn't need to forgive him to be free. I just needed to stop remembering him with pain. That night, I texted Maya one simple line. Closure doesn't come from their apology. It comes when you stop needing one. She replied with a heart emoji and, look at you dropping wisdom bombs like it's poetry night. I laughed for real this time, the kind of laugh that doesn't ache afterward. A few days later, I got another message, this time from Lila. He's with someone else now. I shouldn't care, but it hurts. I guess this is what I deserve. I hope you're happy, Rebecca. I typed back one final response. I am. Then I blocked her number for good, because I was finally living the life they both said was too boring. Quiet, stable, peaceful. The kind of life they'd once mocked and now begged for. And in that stillness, I realized something beautiful. Peace isn't boring. It's just something people without it can't recognize. A year had passed since the night everything collapsed, and if you'd told me back then that I'd be here grounded, content, even grateful, I would have laughed. But that's the thing about peace. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. It seeps in quietly until one morning you wake up and realize your heart doesn't flinch anymore. My career had flourished. I'd been promoted to lead architect on a new urban renewal project, something that would reshape part of the city skyline. My work became my anchor again, not a distraction. I traveled, made new friends, and most importantly, learned to enjoy my own company. And somewhere along the way, Daniel, the quiet analyst who used to share late-night office coffee runs, became more than a friend. He wasn't a whirlwind like Calvin. He didn't speak in grand promises or make chaos sound like adventure. He was calm, consistent, real, and after years of equating intensity with love that felt like a revelation. Our relationship grew slowly, like sunlight spreading across a quiet morning, steady, warm, and genuine. One evening, Daniel took me to a small restaurant tucked away downtown. The lights were soft, the music mellow. We talked about everything and nothing, the kind of conversation that doesn't need to impress, just connect. At some point, I laughed at one of his dry jokes, and when I looked up, I froze. At the far end of the room, sitting alone at the bar, was Lila. She looked older. Not in age, but in spirit. Her makeup was smudged, her hair unkempt. There was a sadness in her that no amount of apology could erase. She noticed me too. Her eyes widened, disbelief, then shame. Before I could look away, she stood and started walking toward our table. "Rebecca," she said softly, voice trembling, "can I talk to you?" Daniel glanced at me silently, asking if I wanted him to step away. I shook my head. "You can say whatever you need to right here." Lila swallowed hard. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to say this. I lost everything. Calvin. He's with someone else now. Someone younger. My career's gone, my reputation's trashed, and Mom barely speaks to me. I've been living out of a rented room. Her voice cracked, tears spilling. "You were right, Rebecca. You were always right. I thought I was chasing love, but I was just running from myself." Her words hung heavy between us. For a long moment, I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, my sister, the girl who once shared a bedroom with me and stole my sweaters, now a stranger hollowed out by her own choices. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. "Leela, I hope you find peace, but that peace doesn't live with me anymore." She stared at me, eyes glistening. "I just wanted you to know. I miss you." "I don't," I said quietly. "Not anymore." Her lips parted, but no words came. She looked at Daniel, then back at me, and I saw it, the full weight of her regret crashing in. Then she turned and walked away, shoulders shaking. Daniel reached across the table, taking my hand. "You okay?" I nodded, breathing deeply. "Yeah, that was the last ghost." A week later, I heard the final piece of their story. Calvin and Lila's breakup had gone public, messy, humiliating. A mutual friend sent me screenshots I didn't ask for Calvin's new girlfriend, posting cryptic captions about cheaters never change, and Lila commenting underneath with broken heart emojis. It was tragic in a predictable way. But I didn't feel triumphant, just finished. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's watching people fall into the holes they dug for you and realizing you don't even need to look down anymore. That Friday, Daniel surprised me with a weekend trip, a quiet cabin near the lake. The same river, actually, where I'd once planned to propose to Calvin. Life, it seemed, loved full circles. As the sun set over the water, Daniel handed me a small velvet box. My heart skipped. He smiled nervously. "I know you've been through a lot, and I don't want to replace anything from your past. I just want to build something new with you, at your pace, no pressure." When he opened the box, I gasped. Not because of the ring, but because it was the same minimalist design I'd once picked out for Calvin. Except this time it didn't feel like a recycled dream. It felt like a healed one. Tears stung my eyes as I nodded. Yes. He slipped the ring on my finger, gentle, certain, real. Months later, at our engagement dinner, the night felt like a movie I'd rewritten for myself. Warm laughter, music, no chaos, no secrets. And for a brief moment, I saw a familiar face near the entrance, Lila again standing outside the restaurant, watching from afar. Our eyes met for half a heartbeat. She smiled faintly, then turned and disappeared into the night. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. Some people are chapters you don't reread, not out of anger, but because you finally learned the story's lesson. As Daniel and I danced under the soft glow of lights, I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who thought love was sacrifice, that silence was weakness. Now I knew better. My voiceover would have ended like this. Peace isn't boring. It's the quiet sound of a heart finally beating for itself. The same peace she once called dull became the life she begged for. And with that, the story that once broke me finally let me go.